Hey everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Chinmoy Mishra, the founder of HooLiv. Chinmoy is a graduate of NIT Rourkela and has also attended Babson College. Chinmoy has worked for companies such as Infosys Health Assist, Vivant, and founded a company called Ali's Health, and now working on building HooLiv. Hi, Chinmay. Welcome to ELI.
Thank you, Priya. Appreciate the opportunity and the time.
I would
Thank you.
request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure, absolutely. So hello everyone. As Priya said, my name is Chinmoy. I'm the founder of HooLiv, and I have been an entrepreneur for the last 8 years. This is my second venture. After a very successful exit from my first venture, we just launched HooLiv about year and a half back. And prior to starting my first venture way back in 2013, I worked, I studied in the US for about 10 years or so. As Priya rightly said, I was part of Infosys. I was working out of Philadelphia for a long time. And we came back to India in 2013, and that's when I started my first venture along with three other co-founders. And one of them happened to be my elder sister as well. And even in the second venture, we have the same founding team. So that's, I think, is one of my biggest assets that I've carried over from my first venture. So I look forward to the conversation, Priya.
Chinmay, let's start with the venture you are building. What is HooLiv about? What kind of what is the problem you are trying to solve through this venture?
Sure. So Priya, HooLiv is into the student accommodation space. I think all of us have been through that phases in our life where we have stayed in student accommodations, we've stayed in PGs that we call, and we know how unorganized that market is. The properties are so pitiable; they are very unhygienic. There is lack of safety, privacy. So HooLiv is trying to address this problem, making properties much better for student accommodation, improving the quality of living for students across the country. And we are primarily focused on the non-metros, the tier 2, tier 3 cities. I think that's where you have a dearth of good properties and where we could come in and actually shape up those buildings. So as part of HooLiv, Priya, what we're doing is we are taking over the properties from the property owners, which are currently being run as student accommodations. We are then putting in our own capital to retrofit the building, improve the hygiene, the amenities, provide more safety, security, and then rent it out back to the students, right? And another key thing that we are doing, Priya, is that when we work in this segment or this demography, which is, you could say, slightly base of pyramid, we realize that a lot of students, when they move out of their home for the first time, they are under a lot of peer pressure. They do not have many families or friends around, and they're under constant pressure to perform. They have a, you could say, budget when it comes to how much they can pay for various services. And most significantly, when after staying at say maybe in a tier 2, tier 3 city, once they move out to a metro, they again face the challenge of actually competing with students from there and rubbing shoulders with them, the self confidence. So what we're trying to inculcate a big way, Priya, in our properties is we're focusing a whole lot on a community building aspect where students can interact with each other, and then take it a step ahead and say how can we improve the employability quotient of those students. Maybe provide them vocational training, provide them internships, or even soft skill programs, spoken English courses. So whatever, wherever we are opening up properties, Priya, that constitutes a big part of what our initiative is about. And at present, I think we are operating almost 4,000 beds across 5 cities in the country. And this financial year end, we are very hopeful to hit about 5,000 odd beds. And maybe by next financial year end, look to take it up to almost 15,000 beds. And we are also backed by a very strong group called the Pulte Patil Developers. They are a public listed company, one of the top real estate groups in the country. So they came in as our investors just before the lockdown. So that was a good thing that happened for us. And so that's where we are positioned. I think as far as student accommodation is concerned, we must definitely be in the top 4 or 5 players in the country in a very short span of time. And does that give a good idea, a fair idea, Priya?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now coming back to our core discussion, now I would like to understand, or rather, hear from you your story. Why don't you tell us how different events in your life shaped up you as an entrepreneur? You can start
Mhm.
from the very beginning when you.
Sure, sure. Sure, absolutely, Priya. Priya, I know. I think starting up your own venture is a leap of faith. You don't realize what you are letting go till the time you're actually in it. So when I was in the US, working there, life was all good, but slowly and steadily you feel that there is a sense of complacency setting in. You become complacent. You've been doing the same work over and over again, every passing day. And even sometimes even a client appreciation stops to have meaning, because you're like, hey, this is what I've been doing. If I'm not good at it even after 6 years, I am no good at all. So I think a sense of complacency sets in, but most significantly, Priya, there is an element of mediocrity that comes in. You feel that you are getting mediocre. The world is just moving past you. So I think when we were, in 2000, you could say 2000 towards 8 or 9, no, not 2008, 2006, when I went for my master's in Babson College. I think just before that, I had pretty much decided that, look, I wanted to do something of my own. I didn't still know what is it that I wanted to do, but I was definitely sure that, hey, look, I'm going to come back to India and start something of my own. Enough of, the 9 to 5 existence on a treadmill. So with that thought, I actually went for a school which is one of the finest in the world for entrepreneurship, Babson College. And I think once I was at Babson, Priya, that's when I was opened up to a lot of possibilities. A lot of possibilities, a lot of ideas, where you are kind of coming across people from all walks of life, from all different nationalities, various contexts, and people who are looking at starting their own ventures. I think you start feeding from each other. You grow from their inspirations. Take them as their inspiration and grow from there. So I think that is what shaped my whole career post that whole Babson experience. And when I came out, I realized that I've always been in large enterprises. I've never had worked in a startup. So I think one of the names that you mentioned, Health Assist, that was fairly a smaller venture based out of Bangalore. So I was heading their sales in North America again, but we started up a complete division and I was in charge of that. So I think that gave me a good flair of the startup world. So I came back, and I think it was in 2012 when I was in Bangalore for a short time. So my CEO, I distinctly remember, Priya, my CEO walks into my room one day and says, I think that was about April or May of 2012. He just walks in and says, Chinmoy, what is wrong? And I don't know where I drew the courage from, Priya. I was very fond of him. He was, the fondness was mutual actually. And so I just looked at him and said, sir, I want to move on. Right? I think someone has said, I can't remember who, but all it takes in life is 5 seconds of bravery, right? 5 seconds of courage. So I said, no, I want like to move on, start something of my own. And by that time, I had a fairly good idea of what is it that I wanted to do, based on the fact that I had spent all my working life in healthcare and a technology space. So I think health tech was very natural choice for me. You could say I was very myopic. I didn't know anything else. So I had a fairly good idea. So 2012, towards the June, July is when I moved out, and then pretty much spent the rest of the year in kind of setting up the venture. In 2013 is when I hit the ground, and I was fortunate enough to have my elder sister on board right from the beginning. And then we had another couple of partners joining in, wonderful guys, and we have been together for the last 8 years now. I know that's how good the team has been. So yeah, I think I remember there are very funny memories, Priya. When I quit my job and started this whole entrepreneurial journey, I remember talking to my dad, and every time we talked to him, we would have a normal conversation, and towards the end, he would be like, "This is all good. You are trying to do something of your own, but you shouldn't have quit your job." So that used to be a very standard response, and understandably so, because my family, everybody had been in public service throughout their life, so it was a very difficult thing to figure that someone could be starting something of their own. So as I said, yeah, it was an immense leap of faith for every one of us who chooses this path. And when once it hits you, once you're into entrepreneurship, it hits you that, hey, you no longer have a salary coming in every month, and rather you have to worry about how to pay your colleagues every month. So you and then with all the interconnected world that we have in the world of Facebooks and Instagrams, where you see your friends and families vacationing in Hawaii, someone is going on a cruise, and then you are struggling, even on a Sunday you are on your laptop and trying to pitch to an investor. I think it hits you pretty bad. But then, yeah, the thrill of doing it, it changes you as a person. Entrepreneurship changes you as a person. You become extremely humble. There is a sense of humility you start building up. So I always say, Priya, that if you look at some of these finest entrepreneurs the country has produced, right from your Anand Mahindra to Narayan Murthy to Sridhar Vembu, the Zoho guy. You will find one thing which is common across all of them is humility. You know, either the either there could be two things: either the path is so tough to the top that it makes them humble, right, or they are at that position because they are humble. But that is one single trait you will find among all successful people, whether it is Warren Buffett, every one of them. So I think that changes you as a person, Priya, and many different ways. You become extremely thick-skinned. You don't get easily disturbed by things happening outside, right? You don't get disturbed by 100 investors telling you no on your face. So I think, yeah, it changes you as a person. It's a big leap of faith. And so to all advice, my advice to all first time entrepreneurs would be, it's not an easy path to follow, but I think it is very, very rewarding in many different senses, not just in the monetary perspective, but it's rewarding for the fact that you're working for yourself. The stress that you have is a good stress, so yeah, so that's been the common theme across both the ventures, Priya, so far.
How do you recruit people into your ventures?
When we started, Priya, I think just like everyone else, we used to go with the pedigree. Who is from a good college, who is from a good background, educational background, professional backgrounds. But over a period of time, we realized, Priya, that there were two trends. One is if you take up people who have struggled in their lives, right, and you give them a good opportunity, you give them the respect, they're going to stick to you and be loyal to you much more than anyone else. So we all, slowly by, I think, when we were almost in a very growth phase at All Is Health towards 2017, 2018, when we were no longer struggling for survival, I think that's the time we started picking up people who we realized that they have struggled a lot in their careers. May not be, just not just careers, but even in personal lives. I remember, Priya, that, in 2013, we hired one person, one of the first developers we did. And, he joined us for, I think, about 10,000 a month or 7 or 8,000. You won't believe, Priya, that out of those 10,000, he used to send 5,000 to his father in the village. And in the remaining 5,000, he used to stay in a city like Pune, right? And he is still there after 8 years. And his 10,000 salary is now his take home is around 80,000 or so. All right. So I think, that's the kind of people that you need to take up. That is one. And also on the pedigree and whole college thing, there's a lot of debate even on social media platforms that, should you hire from IIMs, IITs, and ITs and stuff. But what we realized, Priya, is that you hire a person who you think you can work with, irrespective of where that person comes from. So in my second venture in HooLiv, I think that's this, mandate that we have, that look, when we are looking at to hire someone, we are going to figure out whether that person is someone that we can work with and how passionate is that person to work in a startup environment. A lot of people, Priya, also move into a startup world because of for lack of a more politically correct word, is the sexiness of it, right? It's good as a boasting factor to your friends that, hey, look, I work for a startup, but that should be the case. So I think in 7 or 8 years of the journey, Priya, you start figuring out people, you start figuring out who is really passionate about working in a startup and who is just wanting to have it as a vanity factor, right? But yeah, a couple of big themes in terms of recruiting, Priya, to sum it up is we no longer care about the pedigree, right? In fact, we have found that some of the kids from slightly smaller institutes, I hate the word tier 2, tier 3, but some of the smaller institutes, I think they have worked very well for us. And people who have struggled in their personal and professional lives, if you give them a chance, they would do wonders for you. So I think these are the two mantras we follow, Priya, while recruiting.
What is your vision as an entrepreneur and as a founder of HooLiv, where you want to?
We have different goals set for us, Priya. One is definitely on the monetary side. I think I would be lying if I say the monetary aspects don't matter. It matters all the time. We are doing business for making profits. All right, we're a for-profit enterprise. So we have one on the monetary side, Priya. We have set up a goal for ourselves, what we call as Mission 500. So the goal is to make 500 crore top line in 5 years. So we are at least, we have that big North Star that we are pursuing. And on the non-monetary aspect, certainly, as I said, when we work in the tier 2, tier 3, or rather non-metros, for a better word, when we work at the non-metro cities, and when we look at some of these properties that we take up in student accommodation, it's just, for a lack of a better word, it's a tabela, right? So there is a lot of chance to bring about a difference, make a meaningful difference in the lives of students. We're coming on the back of a very successful exit on our first venture. So we want to give back something, to back to the society. So in my first venture, me and Rashmi, my sister, we are both from Bhubaneswar, and we were very passionate about doing something for the health of people in Odisha, but we could never get an opportunity. So I think in HooLiv now we are making a mandate to take up a lot of properties in Bhubaneswar, change the way the students live there. So that's again a big goal that we have. But yeah, I mean, we are taking it step at a time, Priya. We have these lofty goals, but we know that the path to that is very tough, and we have to cherish each and every milestone that we hit, and that is what will keep us going towards that goal.
Can you tell us about one tough decision or a choice you had to make where both sides looked equally good or bad?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big point in all our lives, Priya, had been the day that we actually decided to sell off our first venture. I think definitely that was the most painful moment. It's your baby. We had grown it for 5 years, so I think to give it to someone else was excruciatingly painful, right? And it was a tough decision. And as you rightly said, on one side there was a big monetary benefit to it. It was a great exit for our investors, one of the rarities in Indian healthcare system, healthcare startup ecosystem. So our investors were very happy. Even the four of us, we were getting a very good deal, both in terms of cash plus equity. So it was very, very good. And on the other side of things, we knew that we are at a growth stage, and maybe a year or 2 years down the line, we could be one of the largest ones in health tech space. So I think both the choices looked equally good, but we decided to go ahead with the first one because of multiple reasons. It was based on the you could say where we were, all four of us founders, in our personal journeys, and some of us needed the capital cushion that we had. There were health issues in some of our promoters' families, so we needed that capital cushion, which the acquisition was providing. And the other one factor was also this group was very large group in Southeast Asia. So we could really literally see our venture scaling up. And what the four of us, we started from a 6 by 4 room. And at present it has happened that way, Priya, that it is managing the life of almost 2.5 million people across Southeast Asia. It has grown to about 100 people team. So when you look at those things, this kind of gives you a solace that, yeah, you didn't take the wrong call. But I think that was the most painful choice that we had to make, for sure, to
Can
sell or not to sell.
Okay. Can you give us some insights into how the post-exit life looks like for an entrepreneur? I have heard a lot about on this topic from entrepreneurs who have made successful exits, and they say
Yeah.
it is not that great, to be honest.
It is. And I think when we were also contemplating the whole acquisition part, Priya, I think one of my friends asked me to watch this video of Ronnie Screwvala, when he made an exit, and he had said it beautifully that it's virtually impossible to work for the company that you had started. And I don't think I paid heed to that advice. We went ahead with it. And I think about in a 3 to 4 months time, we did realize that how extremely tough it could be. And what happens, Priya, is that since you have been so passionately involved with it and growing it and taking day-to-day decisions, that moment someone comes to you and tells, "Hey, Chinmoy, I think we should do this," the first reaction you have is, "How could somebody tell me? I know it better than anyone else." So you lose that perspective, Priya. You are, as they say, that if you are in a bottle for too long, you can't read the label, right? And that is what happens. Anyone, even if there's a good, good suggestion, your first reaction is very defensive, and that started to happen. I think our acquisition went through in July, and by October or November, I was convinced that no, I need to move out, right? The other party, our acquirers, were very decent people, so I think they asked us to stay till the year end, help them with the transition, and then we stuck around for a bit more to help them with some of the customers, and then formally moved out. But yes, you have heard very right that while acquisition could be very, very rewarding monetarily if done well, I think the best way to exit a business would be an all cash exit right on the day of acquisition. There's no point in hanging around; it never works out.
What are some of the failures you have gone through as an entrepreneur?
Multiple, Priya. I think more than the success stories. I think it's the failures that have shaped who you are, right? And starting from many different factors. When you look at the customers, for instance, in hindsight, when we were doing well by towards the time when we were selling it, we realized that we might have left a lot of money on the table because we were naive. We didn't know how to negotiate. Maybe at that point in time, an advisor or a mentor could have helped us do better deals. So I think we left a lot of money when it came to the customers. Right, that was a big mistake that we did. When it came to the employees part, Priya, we, because you yourself are so passionately involved, the people that you hire, you are also very attached to them. In a startup world, it's a small team, everyone is kind of a family. What that results in is that it's very tough to fire when people are not performing, right? And you always get that emotional thing into the picture and saying, hey, look, let's give me a couple of more months to this person. Maybe he or she will shape up and all, and that never happens. So what happens, the as an end result of that, all your deliverables, your product quality, everything starts suffering, right? So I think we were very, very lenient or emotionally driven when it came to firing people, right? So that was again the second thing, Priya. And the third thing which we realized is that we, and again, it's based on very much on the upbringing that we have, given our parents have been in public service and we have very educated families. We have never been to selling ourselves that big. We are always comfortable staying behind the screen and letting our work do the talk. But we are living in a world, Priya, is that jo dikhta hai wahi bikta hai. However unfortunate it might be, you might be doing amazingly good work and you might still be struggling to raise funds, but your competitor might be having a very shabby product, but they might be raising tons and tons of funds. And all that you do is sit back in your chair at the end of the day and like, what am I doing wrong? Why are they able to raise so much funds? I'm not able to raise. And it all comes down to simple thing, Priya, is that you need to be visible, right? You need to be out there. You need to be visible. People need to know about you. And I'm not saying that you need to boast your achievements. You could be modest about it, but you need to be visible. So in my first venture, I think we did that, big mistake, that we were always very comfortable being from technology backgrounds. We are very comfortable building the product and saying, okay, our product will speak for itself. Yes, it did, but not in the manner or in the pace that we wanted, right? So that I think is another big mistake that we did. And the last one I could say, and that's again an advice to all young entrepreneurs, is when you are running a venture, you're so deeply involved in the customers, in building a product, in generating revenues, that you lose sight of some of the basic hygiene for your company, which could be your regulatory affairs, it could be your statutory filings, it could be your legal frameworks, legal documents. I think, do not ever lose sight of that. When you are starting your journey, the first thing that you do is hire two people. One is your CA and the other is your lawyer. May not be on your payrolls, but figure out good people who know the startup world. Every document that goes out of your venture needs to be vetted by your lawyer. That is a thumb rule. And every date that you need to be filing your taxes, it needs to be done. During the whole acquisition process, Priya, to be very candid, there were a lot of gaps that we had left behind. We had trusted a CA firm to take care of these things, and it's not actually the firm, the fault of the CA firm. It's our fault that we were supposed to provide that oversight, which we didn't. Right, and it came back to haunt us. There were a lot of gaps. There were filings not done. There were returns not filed. So we had to clear all those things. So very, very basic thing, Priya. But when you are looking for an acquisition, some get acquired, or if you're looking for fundraise, these basic hygienes play a big role, right? So these three or four would be my top picks, Priya, and some of the big mistakes that we did.
What is the definition of entrepreneurship to you?
Um, Entrepreneurship, Priya, is, I believe, it is not about starting a new business. It is a state of mind. You could be an entrepreneur even at your workplace. You could be doing a wonderful job and still be very creative and bring a startup energy to it. So I think it's a very wrong notion that entrepreneurship just means having your own venture, right? And the second thing also, Priya, is that I always say in a lot of forums that entrepreneur and entrepreneurship is over glamorized. People, when people talk about entrepreneurship and us entrepreneurs, they always talk about how much sacrifices we have to do and to be where we are. But if I look back, Priya, I think the biggest sacrifices that has been done is actually by my family members. So they put aside their dreams to see you fulfill yours, right? And there cannot be a bigger sacrifice than that. They also have friends. They also are on the social media. They see their friends, buying an expensive purse, going on a vacation, but they'd never come to you and say, "Hey, I also want that." So I think, Priya, entrepreneurship is all about, the state of mind. It's all about how much you can lean on your family, how much support can, you provide them. And at the same time, always keeping that North Star in the mind that, look, this is where I want to be, whether monetarily, whether social impact, whatever it is.
Chinmay, you have been around the world. You have seen entrepreneurs from all around the globe. Uh,
Mhm.
how would you? What would be the difference between Indian entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurs from the rest of the world? What would be the differences as per you?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. Yeah, Priya, I think having studied and worked with entrepreneurs from across the globe, I think one thing that fundamentally separates us from many different other geographies is that we, for some reason, we do not celebrate failure. We look down upon it. Um, the common perception is that, hey, he failed because he couldn't do anything, and that's, I think, is a very, very bad perception. But when you look at the Western world, when you look at even European countries and stuff, I think failure is always very acceptable, you could say, outcome. And we also joke in our circles that if you have a startup failure, you are definitely going to be admitted to Harvard. So I think we should be rejoicing these stories, whether it is success or failure, because at the end of the day, Priya, an entrepreneur never fails. The business may fail or succeed, but the entrepreneur is always succeeding, because the amount of courage it takes to do that leap of faith, it's not for the faint-hearted. Not everybody can do it. So I think that is the one crucial difference, Priya, is that the success is only celebrated and failures are not. That is one. And the second thing is also the way we think about it, the scale we think about, right? What we have always been ingrained in us, Priya, in the Indian entrepreneur, is that first solve a local problem, then you think outside your state, then you think outside your country, right? The challenge that happens is when you are trying to fit your product to solve a local problem, and you say that, okay, I'm not going to look outside, but by the time you feel that, okay, I need to look outside of India, that market might have already gone, right? You're too late for it. And that I see is a big difference when it comes to, say, my entrepreneur friends from US, is that when they launch something, they do not think of a Texas or a California. They think of the world as the playing field. How can they build a product which could be scaling across the globe, right? So I think that is where, again, that the reason why we see very few product companies from India who have done wonders globally. We do not have a Facebook yet from India, right? We don't have a Google. Yes, there are wonderful ventures like Zoho, Zerodha, Infosys, and stuff in Mobi who have done great things, but we can count them on the fingers, right? And so I think these are the two big fundamental differences, Priya, between us and entrepreneurs from the Western world.
My final question to you. Tell us your learnings as an entrepreneur, which can shorten the learning curve of other entrepreneurs who are listening to you right now.
Sure. Priya, one thing that I always have maintained and learned is, make ambiguity your best friend. In a startup world, you don't know what decisions are you going to take in the next hour, in the 2 hour, in the day, in the next day. While we all plan for a long term on our spreadsheets, all our decisions are taken by the minute, right? The world is so ambiguous. So my simple advice would be, make ambiguity your best friend. Do not fight it. You will not be able to fight ambiguity. Just live with it. What it does is makes you a better at taking decisions. But here again, just because you are good at taking decisions doesn't mean you are taking good decisions, right? But at least that's a step forward. So I think make ambiguity your best friend is something that I learned at Babson, and I could never relate to it at that point. But 8 years in this journey, Priya, every other day you are struggling with ambiguity. So make ambiguity your best friend. Don't try to fight it out. And yeah, the second, which I'm very, very vocal about in all platforms, Priya, is that focus on unit economics and profitability. If you are focusing on those two things, if you're nailing that, you would never have a problem with getting investors on board or getting customers. Don't get into the whole, the revenue, the fundraising contest. but focus on these fundamental things when you're growing the business. That will help you much better than just focusing on investors.
On this note, I am done with the questions, and I would say it was a great pleasure to host you here at ELI. Thanks for your time, Chinmay, and our best wishes for HooLiv.
Thank you, Priya, to you, to your team, and everyone. Good luck, and yeah, feel free to reach out to me at any time you need, any information, and hope I was able to do just some justice to the session today, Priya.
Absolutely, absolutely. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Priya. Take care. Bye bye.